Hello, folks. What follows is excerpts from a press conference held by South Africa's Director of International Relations Cooperation, their foreign ministry, and its Minister Ronnie Lamola, or Ronald Lamola, who is taking questions after an opening statement from the press. And the questions involve a number of foreign policy issues, including a couple things of interest to the United States. One is the request by the United States to get visas for Kenyan workers from RSC, that's a subcontractor from Church World Services, to help process refugee aspirants to come to the United States. He answers that question, and then he goes on and addresses several things, including the bogus claim by the South African government that the people suffering from unjust racial persecution are not legitimate refugees. Then he falsely cites, of course, the United Nations and the definition of refugee, which he's wrong about. So watch what follows and read the placards between his comments, and then we'll follow up with a conclusion.
With regards to the visa application for the Kenyan nationals who have applied to Home Affairs to come and assist with the program that is aimed to fast-track Afrikaners on an immigration program of the U.S. It's an individual application by those individuals, and Home Affairs has processed it in accordance with its laws. And I believe they can be able to communicate as to the situation. As to whether the U.S. government has engaged us on this matter or not, yes, they have, through various interlocutors. And we have maintained that as a South African government, we don't agree that this is a refugee program, because there is no genocide in South Africa. And in line with the UN Convention, the Afrikaners that are going to the US do not fit the definition of refugee. We view this as a fast-tracking process of immigration by the US, and it is the right of any state to facilitate entry into their country. In the context of South Africa, there is no refugee program that fits the definition of the UN Convention. So therefore, it cannot be defined as a refugee program. So for that matter, there is no obligation, no duty for the South African government to assist the US government with this refugee program. Because the refugee program, it's a preferential treatment of Afrikaners in South Africa to enter the US. And you know, with our history of our country, a preferential treatment of a particular privileged group, the Afrikaners who are not running away from any genocide in this country, is definitely Apartheid 2.0.
There you have it, folks. Ronald Lamola, the foreign minister, in essence, of South Africa, is saying that South Africa is under no obligation to grant visas to the Kenyans and to help the United States. And he's correct. You're under no obligation whatsoever. Go ahead and make it difficult. Go ahead and piss the United States off. Just ruin that diplomatic relationship a little bit more. You would think a country that's in as much trouble as South Africa is from the tariffs and also from the spotlight being put on them for their racist laws would be more accommodating to its partners. But apparently they're ungrateful country, or at least the ungrateful political party, the ANC, and they'll do whatever they can to poke the United States in the eye. So that's fine. Don't approve the visas. Don't need them. Just trying to make things smoother. Also, he claims fraudulently that these people are not refugees. In fact, they do meet the definition under the United Nations and the protocols for what a refugee is. And that definition, as you saw, is listed right there on the placard after he made that false statement. If they want to say that it's their opinion that they're not refugees because they don't think there's anything wrong with South Africa, that's fine. He also falsely brings up the topic that leftists bring up all the time, not brought up by conservatives, and this false narrative about genocide and saying that there is no genocide, therefore they can't be refugees. Genocide is not the basis for refugee status, my friend. Unjust racial persecution, religious persecution, or membership of a particular group, like being gays or being Uyghurs, that is the basis for refugee status under the United Nations, and you're a signatory to that agreement. So one would think that the foreign minister of South Africa would be better informed than he is. I think that we have to ask the question, are they willfully lying to the public because they're embarrassed at how bad things have become in South Africa, or are they just wholly ignorant of what the law and what the international agreements are? I suspect they can't be wholly ignorant of what the law and the international agreements are. So they don't have to help the United States. That's their prerogative. But then they insult the sovereignty of the United States. The South African government and Ronnie Lamola are very fond of claiming that they're a sovereign nation, and they are. And they're entitled to not help the United States, give visas to those Kenyans. That's their prerogative. But at the same time, they turn around and insult the United States and the sovereignty. Now, whether they think that the people going to America refugees or not isn't germane, because it's none of their business. U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act 1980 governs immigration law in the United States, and it's in accord with the international standards for refugees. And these people meet the standard. Therefore, they've been granted the status. The fact that it embarrasses the African National Congress isn't germane. It really isn't. And we don't care. And we shouldn't care, because it's an internal domestic issue. And every time that the ANC officials want to deny that they're refugees, they simply insult the United States and make things even worse. So I would suggest they just be quiet about it and just live with it. And finally, perhaps one of the most important things here is the inability to understand modern standard written English, or their refusal to tell the truth. It's one of the two. Either the South African officials are not cognizant of the English language, or they're simply lying to the public. What am I talking about? Specifically, this nonsense to keep calling all the refugees Afrikaners when we know they're not. Eligibility is for all racial minorities who are suffering from past persecution or fear legitimately future persecution. So South Africa's 4.8 million white citizens, it's 6 to 8 million colored citizens, and it's 1.3 million Indians at a minimum qualify for this program if they meet those criteria. So we're talking 12 to 14 million people, not 2.8 million Afrikaners. And I suspect Ronald Lamola is well aware of that. But the South African government continues to push the false narrative that this is a program for whites, also using this bogus stereotyping of whites as being privileged. Obviously, he doesn't know all the white people I know, people very much not privileged. And then, talking nonsense. And when all else fails, resort to race hustling and stereotyping of groups. Once again, reinforcing the basis for the refugee status in the first place, persecution from the government, falsely calling them something they're not, and using stereotypes, racial stereotypes that have been disproven time and time again. So what say you, folks? Do you think that the minister is correct in his assessment of what's going on? Again, it's South Africa's prerogative. They don't have to help with anything. But I would suggest that's rather foolhardy. And it's time for the fake legacy media in South Africa and for politicians to stop lying about this program. It's right there on the website for anybody that takes a moment to just a moment to gander at it. It's been there since May 12th when the program was opened up. It is open to all racial minorities in South Africa. All. And there were coloreds who came in the first 59. And there are other coloreds and Indians who are going over to the States. So they can lie about this all they want, but eventually they'll be proven to be liars. And I guess they'll just shake their head when it happens. So there you have it, folks. What say you? Cheers.